want to give you a little bit of context of what was around the tabernacle. So in this picture, this actually shows the whole camp of Israel. And right at the center, this little, I'm going to see if I can get this to, there we go, does that work? Right there, that little red spot in the center, that's the tabernacle. The little yellow rectangle around it would have been the outer courtyard area. And then you've got the priests who are camped around closest to the tabernacle, and then the 12 tribes that surround that. And so there was a definite order in how they had to be. We had to have, the tribe of Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun on the east, and Benjamin, Manasseh, and Ephraim in the west. And so there was a very specific layout. And you might jot down Numbers 2, 1 through 3:39. I think that's the. If that's not it, it's real close to it. Yeah, it's right on the bottom. It talks about the layout of the camp, and I want to say that's also, they talk about kind of the marching orders of when they picked up camp and left. There was also a very specific way they had to leave, and so there were certain tribes that left first. The Ark of the Covenant was out front, followed by certain tribes. The priests would carry the different parts of the tabernacle. There were some of the priests who were in charge of like all the the posts, the linens, all the structural stuff. And then the sons of Aaron were the ones who were in charge of things like the golden lampstand and the table of showbread. The things were actually in the tabernacle, and so they had to go in, cover those things before they could bring them out to take them as they moved their camp. So it's really interesting to look at that. Let's look at Exodus 15. If someone could read 15, 13 through 18 for me. Jump in if you have it.
In your unfailing love, you will lead the people you have redeemed. In your strength, you will guide them to your holy dwelling. The nations will hear and tremble. Anguish will grip the people of Philistia. The chiefs of Edom will be terrified. The leaders of Moab will be seized with trembling. The people of Canaan will melt away. Terror and dread will fall upon them. By the power of your arm, they will be as still as the stone, until your people pass by, O Lord, until the people you bought pass by. You will bring them in and plant them on the mountain of your inheritance, the place, O Lord, you made for your dwelling, the sanctuary, O Lord, your hands established. The Lord will reign forever and ever.
So the people that would see the Israelite camp, they would be fearful because of God. And their march through the desert to the promised land was not just some nice little march through the desert and off camping, but they were seen as a war camp by the surrounding nations. The layout of this camp was very common for those from the surrounding nations, that they would have their pharaoh or their king in the tabernacle, in like the tabernacle. You've got the two-part structure, which we'll see, where you've got the most holy place and the holy place, and the king or the pharaoh would have that same section as like the most holy place. Am I saying that clearly? That's in their camp, that would be their place, and they would meet with their commanding generals in what would be like the most holy, or the holy place, I'm sorry. And then their troops would camp around it. So this whole camp structure, someone from one of the other surrounding nations would look at it and go, oh, well, they're a war camp. They're a tribe on a warpath kind of thing. There's a book called From Eden to the New Jerusalem by T. Desmond Alexander, and he talks about this. I'm going to read a quote here from him. It says, the layout of the Israel camp resembled those of ancient Near Eastern kings when they embarked on military campaigns. The divine king's tent was located in the center with his army spread around him, so similar to the tabernacle. Given its location and lavish furnishings, the Israelites would undoubtedly have perceived the tabernacle as a royal tent, its occupant being the king. And so here we've got God as our king, and that's his royal tent. In line with this, the gold-plated Ark of the Covenant, adorned with cherubim, was viewed as the footstool of his throne. The king's throne would be housed in his tent. And so the Jewish people had an idea that that most holy place, and we'll talk about this later on too, was the place where heaven meets earth. That was where God's footstool was in that most holy place. So this is actually a picture of that tabernacle in the desert in Israel that I was telling you about. And so you can see what it would have looked like, but surrounded with whole bunches of people. Let's see, Exodus, you might just jot this down. Exodus 38, 21 through 31, actually talks about all of the materials that went into building the tabernacle. So in our terminology, it ends up being 3 3/4 tons of silver, 2.5 tons of bronze, and 1 ton of gold that was used in this structure.
What was that again? 3 3/4 tons?
3 3/4 tons of silver, 2.5 tons of bronze, and 1 ton of gold. And I came across the number, as of January 2011, the value of these metals that were in this would be $45.7 million in our day today. And 42 of that would be in gold alone.
How much was in dollars?
$45.7 million. And so that's just for the things that built it, not even what it means or what it represents. The value of that is immeasurable. All these metals, you look in this desert, there's nothing there. So you have to stop and wonder, where did they get all these metals and stuff? And if you look in Exodus 12, 31 to 36, it talks about how God made the Egyptians favorably disposed towards the Israelites. So as the Israelites were leaving Egypt, the Egyptians gave them all these materials. God made it so that they gave them all the materials that they needed to make this tabernacle structure. And I think I was pondering this again the other day, and every time I go through this material, more and more new stuff just keeps coming up. And I got to wondering if maybe part of the reason why that golden calf was so horrible was God had made a way. He had provided all the stuff to make this. This is what he wanted his people to do, to worship. And they took it and they built this calf, this golden calf, this idol, with the stuff that he already had this plan in mind. And that's what they did with it. But anyway, sad. As we look at this camp, there's a graduation from the holiness that you talked about. The most holy place would be the furthest place in that center tent. That would be the most holy place. And then coming out from there is thought to be less and less holy. So you have only the high priest who could go through to the most holy place. You had some of the other priests, Aaron's sons, who could minister in the holy place. And we're going to look at all these individually as we get a little closer. And then moving out into the courtyard, the other priests would minister out there, and that's where they would do the animal sacrifices. And then the laver is what you see there as well. So we will get to all of those shortly. So how many Israelites were in the wilderness? And this is up for debate. When you take Dr. Hess's class, he goes with something other than a literal interpretation of the Bible, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But let's look at the literal interpretation. Numbers 1:46 says there were 603,550 men available to serve in Israel's army. And so if you consider those are the fighting men, well, then they have wives and children and parents who are older than the fighting age. And so if you go by those numbers, there could be 2 to 3 million Israelites in the wilderness. And that would be comparable to the 2010 census in Denver. There were 2.7 million people in the whole Denver metropolitan area. So you think about how many people that is, and then you've got this little tabernacle in the center of all of it. Quite a picture. The other interpretations, and a lot of study Bibles will talk about an ancient, complex, or unknown numbering system. And that system would look at that 603,000, and I don't understand it. It's unknown, it's complex, but from what I can gather is they would look at that number and say there were 60 commanders over 3,550 men. That's one theory, is that there was somehow designating the leaders along with the army. And so if we went with a numbering system like that, we're talking more about 20 to 30,000 people. So a huge difference between that and the 2 to 3 million. I don't know what's right. I'm not sure. At first I was going with the literal interpretation, and then after talking to Dr. Hess, I'm like, well, that sounds reasonable too. So I'm not quite sure where that's at yet.
Well, that's quite a differentiation.
It is.
Those numbers.
It is.
And in terms of those theories, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking if Moses had to lead these people out of Egypt, and there were 2 to 3 million with no PA system or loudspeakers, or how did he
How would they do it?
coordinate that? And also, how did they pass through the sea in that number with their kids and cows and property? Then the sea closed in on the Egyptian army, not discounting the power of God. So I think I like the number 20,000.
I know, that's kind of what I'm coming to as well. I mean, I like the impressiveness of the 2 to 3 million, but I'm thinking, well, maybe there is something there. So it'd be interesting to do some more study into that complex system. Because I'm like you, I'm like, how in the world can you manage 2 to 3 million people? I mean, if you think about all the people in Denver, how in the world would that work? I have no idea. So I did do a comparison. The Pepsi Center holds 20,000 people. And so you can picture yourself as one in the Pepsi Center. That's a comparison there.